let's see. Is this good? Okay, yeah. All right, so I'm back with Saturn Synastry, right? I started Saturn Synastry. Yay, good for me. No, but guys, okay, so I want to start with Saturn in partner's first house Synastry. Now, just stick with me because I definitely will be posting more and more videos and as the up and coming days. All right, so it's like, why not? Okay, so this is the thing. I am here to just give kind of like a better twist in understanding to this whole Saturn thing. I don't want to dismiss the fact that Saturn can be tough. Saturn synastry can be tough. But I feel like if we can come from a place of understanding that Saturn is going to trigger our insecurities, especially when it comes to relating to other people, and especially when it comes to close relationships, it's going to trigger our insecurities and it's going to challenge us. There's a very, very good thing happening when you have certain synastry aspects or Saturn playing out in your synastry chart. And you can say, you can kick, beg, cry, scream. Okay? This is the thing. The bottom line is this. If it's a situation to where you should not be with an individual, like it was not going to work, you in the long run, it wasn't going to work. The person was a lying, cheating twit, however you want to put it. Hey, I don't know. Saturn, and let's say you knew that you wanted something serious, but the other person did not. Okay, it's hard to detect whether they do or not. Saturn is your savior in this particular situation because it's very hard wherever Saturn is making contact, a synastry contact. It is very hard. Okay, very, very hard to bypass that Saturn energy, to do anything other than teach a lesson, be serious, change a life. Okay, that's the only another planet that other planets that would do that is Uranus and Pluto. But here we're talking about Saturn. Actually, Saturn has the ability to withstand or present a longevity within a relationship. It really does. And when most people overcome the whatever insecurities Saturn is bringing out, they have a pretty strong, durable relationship. Like I've seen this time and time again. Okay, so with that being said, let's go with Saturn in the first house synastry. Like whenever your Saturn is falling in someone else's first house, or whenever someone else's Saturn is falling in your first house, what we get here is a what comes to seem initially as a stalemate, right? Like the first house person could feel, I mean, this is subconsciously or unconsciously. It doesn't matter. I'm subconsciously, unconsciously, or consciously, should I say. The first house person can feel as if they can't really be who they all the way completely want to be around the Saturn person. The first house person feels this. Like the first house person feels that the way that they express themselves, the way that they show up in the world, and just like who they are, like what they represent, even some aspects of their mind, because we are talking about the rising in the first house. The mind is also present here. Now we could talk about that more in the third house. This is just aspects, right? Okay, the first house person feels like the Saturn person is preventing them from being a certain way. Now, here is the catch. Here's the catch. There's a very big possibility that the Saturn person is not even doing that. But the first house person could see the Saturn individual as something, someone serious, someone that is wealthy, someone that has status, has some type of rank. It can see the Saturn person as like big business as well. Okay. And it becomes, it wherever Saturn is touching someone else's house, this is pretty much the vibe. Okay. It's not always on the Saturn person. The person with the Saturn placement is not the one that's always inflicting their Saturnian energy to the house person. It's not always. Sometimes the first house person is perceiving or is feeling as if or is thinking or believing that the Saturn person is doing these things, or that they need to change themselves in some type of way, or they need to show up in some type of way in order to benefit from Saturn, or in order to be accepted by Saturn. Okay. And yes, there are sometimes when the first house person is interacting with Saturn, that Saturn does demonstrate this how should I say it? Like putting the first house person on like a chain, or the first house person can feel like they're being disciplined from just exploring, or restricted, from just exploring their surroundings and just exploring life and just being free in what that looks like. Because the Saturn person could look at the first house person sometimes as moving funny. Literally, like, okay, yeah, you're moving funny because I haven't talked to you. You're out here, you're doing these things. Like, the Saturn person automatically shows up serious to the house person, the first house person. And the Saturn person is just not going to allow certain things to take place. And I do look at it as the Saturn person's insecurities showing up as well. Okay. There's insecurities being projected here and presented here. And that's pretty much what it is. The Saturn person starts feeling insecure that the first house person is doing things, is involving themselves in things, and that leaves the Saturn person out. And therefore, the Saturn person is going to present, I'm not tolerating this behavior to the first house person. I'm not tolerating this. The Saturn person could have hurt feelings. The Saturn person could be feeling very insecure. The Saturn person could be feeling so many different things, but is going to project its feelings as limitations to the first house person. Now, mind you, the Saturn person could really, really look up to the first house person. Like, they could really admire the image of the first house person. They could really admire the braveness of the first house person, the boldness of the first house person, because it's now, unless the first house person has Capricorn, because if there's Capricorn in the first house, there could be this same admirance by the Saturn person to the first house, but at the same time, it's different, because Capricorn in the first house can present an individual that wants and needs and prefers someone like Saturn sitting in their first house. It's like, Saturn supports the first house, okay? Because that can happen. But the main thing here is the first house person, the Saturn person can have all these feelings, but when it's time to present what those feelings are, instead of just communicating to the first house person, like, listen, I want to spend more time with you. Like, I want to spend more time with you. I want to see you more. I want, or I need, or I will like, blase. The Saturn person gets real restrictive to the first house person and may even be like, listen, either you do it this way or I'm gone. Okay. You see that with this particular synastry. You can see this because the first house person, remember, although it's not the sun, our first house really does affect a lot of what we do in the way that we think. And it's just initially, because everybody wants to have this defense up. And as you get to know the person deeper and deeper and more, the defense mechanism lets down. And, once you move past the first house, you might find that the person is not really, they may become like a completely different person than what their first house is projecting. Okay, so it's a set of projections. Now, Saturn here, if Saturn can get to a position to where it's able to just let the first house person kind of do their thing and communicate more with the first house person, and they can make it through the test. They can make it through the restrictions, the limitations, the insecurities. What ends up happening is the first house person will begin to trust the Saturn person to allow them to do this, or to just feel like they could just be themselves more. Because really, the first house person is feeling restricted because they feel like, okay, I really can't be myself. They want to kind of feel out Saturn. Now, remember, Saturn is over here thinking it's been Mr. Big Open person, and, it's displaying all these emotions and these grand gestures, and the first house person knows that Saturn's interested, but Saturn's really not doing this. Saturn's really not doing this. Saturn needs to be able to trust the first house person and relax a little bit and trust the process as well, and let its guard down so that it can allow the first house person the room to open up. And Saturn has to open up as well. And depending on what sign this is in, it will explain or tell a more deeper story or more intricate way of where this is playing out. But until then, really, when Saturn becomes trustful and it fights past its insecurities that it feels like the first house person is triggering, it's fear of some reason of maybe not being adequate, or maybe not being completely involved in the first house person's life and what they have going on, and not really knowing the first house person. When Saturn can relax itself and be open to what that looks like and communicate these things to the first house person in a way that they can, then they move past the blocks and the stagnation of the relationship, and they're able to then go to another level of deeper interactions with each other. Okay? And when this happens, Saturn starts to see, first house really does want me to be involved with their life and what they have going on and who they are. And I'm not to really restrict what that is. And the first house person finds that, Saturn is, a little bit more sensitive and open to express itself as well. Okay, I can deal with this. Okay, so this has been Saturn in the first house Synastry. I'm Butterfly to Light, and I'm going to be back.